You wouldn't buy a car without a seatbelt, a laptop without Wi-Fi, or go a day without your cell phone. Could a business survive without the internet? Then why are many healthcare providers and provider organizations still not connected and enabled to share critical clinical information digitally in the care of your friends and family? Welcome to Kno2fy, a podcast from Kno2. Join host Dr. Peter Schock, Chief Health Officer, and Teresa Bell, Founder, President, and CTO, as they bring the profound impact of healthcare communication to life through frank conversation in understandable language and through real-world context. They'll demystify interoperability, helping you unlock the potential of healthcare communication at scale. You'll also learn the transformative impact of being Kno2 connected. Connect, listen, transform.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Kno2fy. Dr. Peter Schock here, and as always, my co-host, Teresa Bell. We're happy to have this conversation today with a strategic partner of ours, with DocuSign. And Teresa, before we get started and introduce our special guest for today, I understand you're traveling today. Is that correct?
I am, and so you may get some special sound effects today as you hear background noises and everything else from the hotel. They don't have my room ready yet, so thank you to the audience for being patient with me today. But yes, I am traveling today.
I appreciate the dedication of my co-host, that even when she's traveling and situations aren't 100% like they should be, she shows up and always delivers. Trace, anything big going on in the world of interoperability of late that you want to touch base on today? Or
yeah, I think probably to continuing the conversations around the momentum in Kno2fy, QHIN, a ton of activity there that we're seeing push forward, probably faster than most anticipated that Kno2fy is taking off. I think with the other networks as the backdrop, people anticipated more of a slow roll into those networks, but they're moving pretty fast. So that's exciting, and excited to see the participation. We anticipate going live on the edge, right? So we've been designated as a QHIN since February, but we're taking our first partner live. We were very deliberate in our effect to bring it to our own API and make sure it was normalized back into that API. We'll be going live in June, the first part of June. So excited for that, and bringing a very special partner live, and that'll be a future announcement. So I won't open that up for this discussion, but excited for that. So that's what's going on. Lots going on, actually.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I was also going to say Kno2fy QHIN from the perspective of just seeing a maturation of the trust frameworks and network, learning from history with all of the previous networks that we've had, and bringing all those lessons learned to bear in the formation of Kno2fy QHIN. And I think it's really important that we not only get the adoption in terms of getting our technology partners live on the edge, but end user adoption as we move forward. One of the things, talking about end user adoption, the way we get end users adopted, and you and I have talked about this many, many times, is creating relevance to the workflows and solving their big problems that they have through interoperability. And I'm very excited to have a guest with us today from DocuSign. DocuSign is a strategic partner of Kno2's, and we're bringing a solution to market that we're very excited about. But before we get into all of that, let's introduce our guest. And MJ, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves to the Kno2fy audience. Thank you for being with us today.
No, thank you both for having me. I'm excited to join you in this forum. I've listened to many of your previous podcasts, and so I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. I've been with DocuSign now for about 3 years, but I'm no stranger to tech, digital transformation, or to healthcare and interoperability. So for the past 15 years, I've been in the tech space, and my role has primarily been within local tech organizations. I would build industry practices. So mostly in mission critical regulated industries. So think healthcare, public sector, and even education and nonprofits. But in many cases, I operate at the intersection of two or more of those. And so I could not be more excited, like I said, to sort of lead the charter. My role here at DocuSign is global head of industries. And so again, inclusive of mission critical industries, but regulated industries in general. Prior to DocuSign, like I said, I've spent almost 15 years in similar roles. But in addition to the hat that I wear at DocuSign, I'm also a proud executive sponsor of Honor. So as a military veteran, I serve as the executive sponsor of our ERG for other military veterans, spouses, and others, and so our allies. And so I'm really excited to talk about that a little bit, as well as outside of DocuSign. I've been affiliated for almost 10 years with an organization called Healthcare for the Homeless. It's an FQHC, or Federal Qualified Health Center. We've got upwards of 250 employees, and we serve some of Baltimore's most vulnerable citizens, over 11,000 last year. And so I serve as the board chair of that organization. So again, in many ways, I'm excited about leveraging technology to bridge socioeconomic disparities at scale and leverage the technologies to do good.
Wow, MJ, I got to tell you, we've met a few times and had the opportunity, as you do in business, to have conversation. But I did not know those two things about you, and I'm so glad you shared those with us, and I'm so glad our audience got to hear that as well. And thank you for your service. Really appreciate that, both in the past and your ongoing service to our veterans. Really appreciate that very much, guys. With that, I got to tell you, let's take a quick break. We'll come right back and get into the heart of the discussion.
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Becker, VP of Interoperability at Kno2. I wanted to take a moment to introduce our connectivity report. Did you ever wonder who in your area you could connect with digitally and reduce the manual activities associated with clinical information exchange? Well, simply visit Kno2.com, click the link for connectivity report, then enter your name, email, and zip code, and we'll send you a report to show those providers and provider organizations already connected and waiting for you to join them. Take the first step to getting Kno2 connected. It's free, takes less than 30 seconds, and will spark digital transformation that could revolutionize your business. There's even a how-to video to make sure you get the most from the report.
Getting Kno2 connected gives you the freedom to unlock your potential and improve patient safety. Visit us at Kno2.com for more information and to see providers in your area waiting to connect with you.
Connect, listen, transform. This is Kno2fy with your hosts, Dr. Peter Schuck and Teresa Bell.
Welcome back, everybody. Special guest today, MJ from MJ. I just use your initials all the time. I don't even use your last name. I don't know if that's disrespectful or I just feel that familiar with you. But right back into discussion. Right back into discussion with DocuSign again, and again, just talking a little bit about our strategic relationship. But Teresa, this relationship that we're embarking upon now, and the solution we're embarking upon now, has roots in a relationship that goes back a number of years with DocuSign. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. Just historically, and kind of bring us forward to where we are today, and then we can kind of jump into where we are today.
Yeah, it actually, it has about 5 years of roots. As a company, because everybody strongly knows that we represent post-acute as a big portion of our audience, and they have these unique signing workflows, which we'll get into later. But I had been approached multiple times by our partners, our EHR partners serving post-acute, and said, "Are you guys going to do your own signing platform? Are you going to bring forward your own signing platform? Are you going to be able to provide signing?" And my answer was, not a chance. Every time, not a chance. We're doing that. We're very focused interoperability. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that we enabled the signing workflows, because the content originated from within our partners that were integrated to our platform, and we had to move that content around per our commitment to them. So for me, it made obvious sense to push forward with a name that was understood in the market, and it was a household name, if you will, and that was DocuSign. And so I did a little bit of my own market analysis and found out that there is a large number of health systems that already have, likely for and primarily for administrative purposes, had a relationship in one capacity or another with DocuSign at the health system level. So it made sense to go forward with a name that they trusted and push forward and see if we could bring the two technologies together. So of course I knew nobody at DocuSign and had no clue who to engage with. So I did what everybody does, right? I went to their website and I put a chat on the front page of the DocuSign website. And this is late 2019. And said, here's the use case. We have a significant opportunity, kind of quantified the opportunities, hopefully to get somebody's attention. And I'll say literally within 5 minutes, I was on the phone with somebody in their health. I think it was health and life sciences is what they called it at the time. I was on the phone with a person that had called. Her name was Bailey, and she had reached out to me. We talked for a bit, and she had vetted it, I think, far enough to say this is the real deal, and we're going to escalate this internally. So within a few weeks, we were on site at DocuSign Seattle and meeting with the company and kind of giving them our plans for what we were going to do. It really was an exciting meeting. And that was just at the beginning of January 2020. And wouldn't you have it that here comes COVID and changes the trajectory and the conversations, because we were very much focused to provider signing workflows, which was a use case that they had not been able to crack on their own because of the interoperability and the complexity of that workflow. So that's what we presented to the DocuSign executive team at their headquarters. And then we moved into quickly pivoted per the request of DocuSign during the course of COVID to move to provider to patient engagement models.
Yeah,
because they had to go to contactless consent and get to really every provider that needed to capture consent and do so in a contactless way. So we helped support that workflow, change the integration that we were already underway with, and moved through COVID as that kind of took everybody's mind share, and we couldn't really come off of that one. Couldn't argue it, to now be back here today. So it took a couple of years after that to jump back into the provider to provider signing workflows, and tremendous momentum. But it's a great story. And first of all, I'll give accolades to the DocuSign team. They were so responsive to a web chat, and it escalated us right to the right people, and been a great relationship since. So long story, but that's how it came together.
I think it's incredibly helpful background. And I think it also speaks to the fact that when the idea is correct, it may take a while to get there, but you end up circling around and getting there. No question about it. MJ, I'm sure that DocuSign had some interesting times during COVID as well. A boon in signing business, but also probably changed the way you guys think about your business a little bit as well.
100%. So I'm really glad that Teresa shared that story and our rich 5-year history, because DocuSign itself has been around for about 20 years. In fact, we celebrated our 20th anniversary just last year. And so to know that for a quarter of that entire lifespan, we've also been a strategic partner of Kno2. Just a little bit of history about DocuSign. So President Bill Clinton signed the e-sign Act back in 2000, right, which allowed for interstate commerce, legally binding e-signatures to be the linchpin of a number of agreements and transactions. And so 3 years later, DocuSign was founded in 2003. And like I said, just last year, we celebrated our 20th anniversary. And today we've got over 1 billion users around the world in over 180 countries.
Wow.
And so we are definitely looking forward to the next 20 years. But to answer your question specifically, during the global pandemic, this once in a century shutting down of our economy and the ways that we went about our lives and everything else. In many ways, in life or death situations, DocuSign was a part of the critical keys that allowed for the continuity of business, of healthcare, telemedicine, you name it. And so now, thank God, we're on the other side of that, but it's impossible in many ways to go back, right? Now that genie's been let out of the bottle. It also, I think, shined a light and potentially exacerbated some of the challenges that existed prior, access to technology and sometimes lack of literacy in certain technologies. But I think with the lessons learned during the pandemic, the momentum and the wind at our backs at this point, we're able to expand the scale and scope of how we go to market and how we impact what we call the business of healthcare, the operational efficiencies that often take place behind the scenes.
Yeah, I love it. And what's funny is when we talk about the business of healthcare, many times we think about business, not clinical operations. And clinical operations drives revenue and business operations for healthcare entities or healthcare in the healthcare industry. And so it's incredibly important that we address that. That's why I like the provider to provider, because it's one of the most significant workflow problems in healthcare today for providers is if I'm an ordering provider of physical therapy, home care, or other such services, those entities who are providing the services need to create a care plan that I have to sign off on in order for them to get paid. And That's historically been true from CMS related reimbursement. Private payers are now following suit, right? So it is a significant book of business. We did some analysis when we were thinking about going to market in terms of the relevance of this problem to the market out there. If you're a physical therapist, occupational therapist, home care agency, 50% of your business probably comes from the CMS reimbursement. And unlike healthcare systems, where commercial payments from commercial payers are the lion's share of what their profitability, driving their profitability, in post-acute, CMS is the biggest payer and the best payer, and largely drives the profitability of post-acute entities, whether it be home care, physical therapy, those kinds of things. And as a result, 50% of your business coming from Medicare, that means 50% of your revenue is dependent upon you having a care plan that's documented for a patient that's signed by the provider. So that means you have to get that care plan signed by the provider who referred them to you in order for you to bill and get reimbursement for those folks. And then when you add on that commercial payers tend to follow suit with CMS, United Healthcare, and some others are doing the same thing, it becomes incredibly relevant if I'm a physical therapist, occupational therapist, or running a home care agency, that I get those signatures as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, the first time I send them out. And if I'm a referring provider, heavens to Betsy, I don't want to be searching through fax machines and mail to sign those orders. I want them to come into my workflow. So more to come on that, but it is a huge problem, and it's wonderful that we're getting around to addressing it. And we can cut ourselves some slack because the pandemic was kind of a big deal in itself, right? And probably rightly diverted some of the attention for those critical things that were more patient-facing in the time. Well, let me ask this question, guys. So as I think about the relationship between DocuSign and Kno2, both incredibly established and respected companies in their area with known solutions. When you guys were talking about DocuSign, I was thinking to myself, I'm a physician, and I never used DocuSign to sign anything in healthcare, but I used it in my personal life all the time, right? I don't know if there's a human being on earth that hasn't been sent a DocuSign document at some point to sign off on, even if they weren't the ones originating it. So it's this known solution combined with this known solution for interoperability that are coming together to do something unique in the market. I'd love to talk about that a little bit. And Teresa, I know that you are an advocate for provider workflow, that we have talked many times about what creates adoption and recognition of the importance of interoperability is impact at the edge through workflows. And this is a key critical workflow. So just walk me through a little bit about how you saw those two coming together and what we're trying to take to market there.
Yeah, it's a really important point. And like I said before, I did a little bit of market analysis. When I say a little, I emphasize that. I just called a few health system executives that I'm friends with and got their input. The important part, because one of the common things, and you know this, Dr. Shuck, all too well, living it, is that every physician, whether they sit in a health system, independent or a mid-sized practice, says, I don't want another portal that I have to log into. And so this idea of having to bring a third-party portal like Kno2, why aren't you doing your own e-signing platform? I knew one was dead on arrival, and we didn't have the expertise to do it internally as a second backup to that. But this concept of a third-party portal, and what's interesting about the DocuSign name, because by all definition, it's a third party, right? It's a third party portal, but because it's so trusted and it's so well known, it feels mainstream to people. Like it's not a third party, it's just part of my work. And that became part of the discussion I had with these executives. And if you brought forward a DocuSign envelope and I delivered it into your electronic health record, or it went to the providers, in some cases to their email or mobile phone, and they had to log into their DocuSign account if they had one, is that a bad thing? And they said, no, oddly enough, because DocuSign is such a trusted name, it didn't feel like the nuisance that a third-party portal would be. So it made so much sense to us because of the trust, the security that people had on. They knew the workflow. So you take all of those factors together, there was no better option for us to send documentation to for providers to engage with. And then the fact that the healthcare IT, especially in the large healthcare systems, they're going to want to control the data. They want to control from a HIPAA perspective where that PHI is showing up. And they either have the controls in place already and with their DocuSign account, or they could easily put them into place and we could start sending signing transactions to health systems in bulk. and their IT people feel it's like it's not some weird product out in the ether that's managing patient information that they have no idea. And they could put a BAA in place with DocuSign. So again, it just led to so many different points of friction that were removed with the DocuSign relationship. It made a ton of sense for us to go down that path.
Yeah, and it's not, MJ, it's not like DocuSign has not been in healthcare, but in earnest, this looks like an opportunity to enter the healthcare sector in a different, incredibly meaningful way, both at the health system level and also the individual provider level. How does DocuSign see that relationship?
That's a great question and a great point. You're right. We're not, as a company, we're not new to healthcare and life sciences. But to your point initially, to be able to partner strategically with a company like Kno2 who has its roots and such a footprint in healthcare, I think it's going to provide synergistic outcomes. The way that we look at it, whether it's healthcare or other regulated industries, is we look to transform the experience of the stakeholders, right, who are critical to the business at hand. And so when you think in healthcare, obviously, there are payers, there are providers, there are patients, there are so many other administrators, so many stakeholders whose experience is ripe for transformation. And so I like to level set first by defining what I mean by an experience. There are typically three core elements, right? The first, there's the engagement. So engagement speaks to how and where, through which channels individuals interact with their agreements or their processes, right? And so it should be intuitive, it should be seamless, it should work, right? So that really speaks to where the rubber meets the road, or in this case, where the finger taps the screen. The second piece is what happens behind the scenes, efficiency. Dr. Shuck, you had mentioned speed, and particularly in healthcare, where it could, without being melodramatic, it could literally be a matter of life or death. So efficiency is really important. We want to streamline, automate workflows, reduce the amount of times that the same data needs to get manually entered, because we know from experience, no pun intended, that that's usually where errors enter the process, right? Is by repeated manual data entry. And then the third is effectiveness, or more specifically, measuring the effectiveness of the first two. And so having metrics to enable our customers and our partners to understand almost in real time whether or not they're on track to realize the value that they set out to realize. And so when it comes to speed, I have a couple stats that I want to mention. Literally, our DocuSign users have reported in aggregate that most envelopes or forms that go out to be signed are returned within 24 hours. 76% of them are returned within 24 hours. 41% of them are returned within 15 minutes. And so when you talk about efficiency and speed and really transforming the business of healthcare, I can think of few use cases where such a transformation would be more welcomed.
Yeah, no.
MJ,
Go ahead.
I'd love to ask a question on that. Yeah, I'd love to ask a question on that. I hadn't heard those stats, and well, now I'm going to be stating them all over the place. Why do you think, and I think it's obvious, but I want to ask the question, what is it in the DocuSign experience, starting with the name, that generates that kind of response time for people to engage? Because I look at other signing platforms, some known, decently known, some not known, especially in healthcare. They don't get that kind of response time. They're looking for every way to engage their signing provider. What do you think it is in particular, or a series of things that it is that creates that kind of outcome?
No, it's a great question, Therese. And I think I have a multi-pronged response. I mean, at the core is trust. So we work overtime to ensure that we earn and maintain the trust of our 1 billion users around the world and over 1.5 million customers, right? So we work overtime. And so with that trust comes, I think, a native, innate reaction. When people see DocuSign, once they have their identification verified and they can confirm that it is in fact DocuSign that they're interacting with, that level of trust bubbles up. And they don't hesitate to interact with our platform. I think secondly, we adhere to a mobile first philosophy. And so understanding the ubiquity of mobile devices, I mentioned earlier that not everybody has access to, MacBooks and laptops and desktops and all of that. So, but the ubiquity of mobile devices is undeniable. And so what we found is at least a third of our documents are signed on mobile devices. And like I said, 76% returned in 24 hours, 41% in 15 minutes. And so between the trust, the omni-channel accessibility of the experience, and then our focus on the experience itself, like I said, optimizing the engagement, delivering value by transforming the back-end efficiencies, and then providing metrics so that you can see in real time the impact that you're having, not only on the stakeholders, but we could talk a bit about the impact that we're having on the environment as well. Over 10 million trees have been saved, over 9 billion gallons of water, and 545 million pounds of waste. So it's a win-win for our partners, our stakeholders, and for the environment.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about that. The other thing that caught me about efficiency with those numbers of 76% within 24 hours and 41% within 4 hours. Did I get that right?
No,
15 minutes. 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Yeah.
I'm sitting back to my days in the clinics or my days overseeing our home health agency, where we would send a fax out. The fax would arrive in an office and get pulled off the fax machine by somebody in the office and get collated into a folder that would be laid in front of the physicians on their desk for signature. The physician would finish their long day, and they might get to that at the end of the day for signature. It might go to the next day for signature. Once it was signed, it was faxed back to the home care agency and then was put in a pile to go to the scanners to scan into our electronic record at that point.
Right.
And we're talking about a 3 or 4 day process to turn around a signature to the home care agency if I did it the first time. And then a week process to get it into the electronic health record where I need it to be able to support my own billing for care plan oversight. So when you're talking about 76% in 24 hours, and 41% in 15 minutes. If I'm a PT or an OT or a home care agency that sends out tens of thousands of care plans on an annual basis for signature, my God, you're cutting the time in I don't even know what the increment is. You're cutting down so much time and so much waste in that process. In addition, we're eliminating the fax cost for every one of those transactions in the process. So unbelievable efficiency and effectiveness in that regard for both providers. Really, really impressive stat. And I think that's the thing, Trace, we might want to touch on this a little bit. I think there is a uniqueness in these two companies coming together to provide this end-to-end solution for provider workflow signatures. The intent being that it's designed kind of, I've not used this term before, but I'm going to try it out with you guys. It's been kind of designed by providers for providers, meaning an understanding of what it's like to be on both sides of that provider-to-provider signature workflow, both from our partnerships and having lived it, and understanding what the bare minimums are for a improved experience in that process. So from the multitudinous ways that it can be sent or received, and we'll get to the direct secure messaging in a minute, to the trackability of it, to the filing automatically back to the EHR of both the signing and the requesting physician is incredibly important. And those were kind of the bookends around the strategy to offer a full-on solution to the market moving forward. Trish, I don't know if you want to comment on that because I know you've been paramount in the designing of that.
Yeah, I think when we decided to attack the provider-to-provider workflow, like I said, there hadn't been much traction in any product in that unique space because of some of the unique challenges that it presented. Unlike the patient-to-patient workflows, provider-to-provider, if you look at the U.S. healthcare ecosystem, there's about 6,000 EHRs, some of them certified and most of them not. And as you look at 6,000 different systems and let's say 60% of those can produce content that needs signature by a referring provider, with that kind of variability, it's exponential in terms of what we have to solve for. And looking at what we brought to the table from the Kno2 side, obviously interoperability and connectivity to all four corners of healthcare and all the different systems, because the document originates in an electronic health record. where sometimes you can create documents in DocuSign, they call it a template, and I can go create my own form and do my own thing. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about content that starts in the electronic health record vendor of the therapist or of the home care provider, and that content starts there. It gets pushed to Kno2, and then delivery to the signing provider, how we deliver it so it's seamless to what they're doing today and we're not disruptive. Of course, they go through the signing experience that they're familiar with today. We already talked about that. But then we had a unique nuance at the end that says it's not only do I have to return this signed document back to the sender, and they need to file it into their own EHR, but the signer also has to file it for their records. They have to keep it. So now we've just doubled the filing aspect at the end of the transaction. And you take that, again, you take 6,000 EHRs. Somebody can do that math equation. It's not this gal. That can say, here's what it looks like across the ecosystem, and you have any number of combinations that present themselves as how does that get solved, which is by and large why no signing platform has been able to accomplish it on their own. And together, that's why the partnership was so strong. We've solved that interoperability problem. Of course, DocuSign is, as MJ already alluded to, they're dominant, right? They are the worldwide dominant player for signature transactions, and the two together is unstoppable to solve this problem. It is the most fax-ridden workflow in healthcare today, is the provider-to-provider signing workflow for care plans and orders. So excited to be able to tackle it.
Yeah, I love what I heard you say is the ubiquity of our integration to critical partners where this workflow is a principal workflow in how they do business and how they get paid. Is incredibly important. And then you combine that with a globally trusted agreement workflow or platform. I mean, it's, and I'm probably not using the right words, MJ, but it is mind-boggling how powerful that can be. And I'm sitting here as a dumb doc going, well, why the heck didn't we have this 10 years ago? Not knowing what it took from a technological perspective, but it is a really potentially powerful solution. And MJ, I don't know, I know you touched on it a little bit around your response to the response rates, the 76% 24 hours, the 41% 15 minutes. There is a trust that people have and a familiarity. I mean, because I've never used DocuSign in healthcare. Like I said, I've used it in real estate transactions. I've used it in business transactions, being hired for a job, completing workflows, those kind of things. I've used it in financial transactions of various nature. You just know what it is, and the experience is familiar. The ubiquity of the mobile devices and your attention to mobile devices, I think, is incredibly smart, because that's where I've signed most of mine, is on my mobile device. I haven't gone to my laptop or my desktop. It's been on my mobile device to sign it. So but the trusted name is and the trusted workflow is incredibly important. No question about it.
Yeah, and when I say trust, I think there are multiple elements of trust. There's trust in the brand. There's trust in understanding that your data is going to be encrypted both in transit and at rest. We earn the trust by, earning the ISO 27001 13 certification, which is the highest level of global information security assurance available to protect documents and data. And then on top of that, we perform regular internal audits of our privacy practices, which undergo external audits as well, right? So we look to maintain these globally recognized certifications and attestations, which include SOC 1 Type 2, SOC 2 Type 2, and PCI data security standards. So, I mean, that's just in the global information security space. I mean, we could talk on public sector. There's FedRAMP and IL4 for Impact Level 4 for DoD. I mean, and I think the reason that I'm going into such detail to explain this is because it speaks to why, across the board, even in the federal government, there are 15 what we call federal executive departments, including the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense. They all trust DocuSign for many of their mission critical processes. And the same goes for state and local governments, which I know in healthcare is often very interdependent when it comes to workflows, whether it's payers or other stakeholders, case managers. Yep. So in every one of the 50 states, DocuSign is a trusted technology as well. So I just can't. I'm sorry for going off on a bit of a rant.
No. I think that's great. I think it's perfect.
When we talk about trust, we take it very seriously.
Yeah, and I'll another area of trust, and this is just again not a non-technical mind, but the consistency of workflow and outcomes, the dependability of I'm getting the same workflow every time. I know how to use it. I can trust how to use it. I can put myself on automate because I've done it, and it's consistent every time. That also builds trust, a different type of trust, but it also builds trust in the product. I know what I'm getting. There's a consistent experience that I'm getting every time, which I think is incredibly important in the process as well. And I think will be important for adoption. I think everything you're describing will drive adoption. And Teresa, I know security is important to Kno2 as well, as we've gone through that process as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yes, of course, because we're a QHIN, we're one of the nation's QHINs, so it's top of the list, I would say, in terms of requirements, and we are high trust certified. I did want to go back to that trusted experience that you were just commenting on, Dr. Shuck, because that was part of our decision making early on, was looking at the experience so we didn't have to educate. That was a key aspect in the component, because today, if we were going to, again, do our own signing platform or find a third party that's not very well known, we could never scale it, because there'd have to be an education on how to log in, where to go get your documents, how to sign. I don't have to do that. And it's, I always call it, and I'm sure DocuSign would, and MJ will wince at when I say this, but I always say it's a drag along signing experience. You don't have to know it. Most people do know it, but it takes you through the experience without any education. And that was necessary, because there's going to be DocuSign envelopes that show in providers' inboxes in their EHRs that they'll just click on it and it'll walk them through it, and they'll feel like it's been every other DocuSign experience that they've ever had. So education, that's trust to me also, that I trust this experience. I know it. I know it's done right. And it's going to meet the needs that I have as a referring provider to make sure I'm meeting CMS requirements.
Yeah, I don't think the drag along reference is pejorative at all. I think the drag along that's how we all want to use things that are unfamiliar to us. We want to be able to use something that might be unfamiliar to us or that might be new to us in a very easy, facile, familiar way. And I think DocuSign allows that. It's funny, and MJ, I know you were going to chime in here, and I'll give you space to do it in just a second. But as I think about having used other signing platforms, some of the other bigger name third-party platforms out there in the past for different reasons in the past, what I have always done is say, well, this is different than DocuSign. Is this the way DocuSign does it? And so in my mind, without even knowing it, MJ, you guys have created an expectation of what the signing experience should be like that I'm comparing everything else to, right? So when you got a chance to take a network that is the gateway, a bidirectional gateway for post-acute from an interoperability perspective that has the ubiquity of integrations across the healthcare ecosystem, and combine it with a agreement workflow that is already intuitive, that I'm already comparing everybody else to. Wow, that just an incredibly potentially powerful partnership. I'll pause. I know you wanted to say something else there, MJ.
Yeah, so I do, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you just said. But I would also venture to add that the value to be gained by DocuSign in particular, but in this case, DocuSign plus Kno2, is to understand the value that is realized on signature, right? So because we're realizing value and we are tangibly creating efficiencies that are enabled at the core because of the signature, at the core of that agreement. But I like to, I know this is an audio podcast, and so hopefully my description will be illustrative. I like to imagine a bow tie. Right? If you could envision a bow tie, and at the center of the bow tie is the knot that holds it all together. But then on the left, you've got sort of like this funnel that leads into the knot, the left side of the tie. And so I think of all of the ways that we could potentially automate processes, important information, PHI from external systems, et cetera. How can we add value before the electronic signature is acquired? And then on the other side of the knot, downstream of the signature, how can we, again, automate processes, streamline workflows, and create a number of opportunities, whether it's a repository for all of your signed agreements, or pulling insights that otherwise would be buried in a stack of faxed documents. You can't measure it if it's not digital. You could, but it would take infinite numbers of hours to try to quantify, identify trends in stacks of paper. And so when I think of this opportunity I mean, it's immeasurable, right? The ability to digitize these workflows in a secure way, two trusted brands coming together in a space that is ripe for transformation.
Yep.
And then enabling our joint customers to measurably take value that, can literally save lives and optimize what I call the business of healthcare. So we're really excited about the partnership.
No, I love the description, the way you summarized that. And for us, it's always about, we often say that that interoperability is the foundation for solving healthcare's biggest problems. And it's a huge statement. But this is an example of that, because it's not about the technology in and of itself, right? It's not about the signature workflow in and of itself. It's not the signature technology. It's not about the interoperability technology. It's the impact that those technologies have on real lives, in real businesses, and so forth. So totally agree with what you said. Guys, it's been a great discussion. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll wrap things up today with MJ. Thank you so much. Be right back.
Hey, Maddie, what's going on? How can I help you today?
I think my allergies are acting up. I've had a runny nose for a few days now, and my eyes are itching, but I don't have a fever or any other symptoms.
Okay, well, honestly, after examining your symptoms and examining you, I think you're in great health. And I think your allergies may just be acting up, but honestly, some allergy medication should really just do the trick.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Of course, let me take a quick look at your chart just to confirm your meds and your allergies, and then I can get that sent to your pharmacy for you electronically. That way you can pick it up on your way home.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Maddie, I see from your chart here that you went to urgent care 3 months ago for a similar complaint, and they thought you may have had a sinus infection and gave you an antibiotic and a decongestant?
Oh yeah, that's right. I totally forgot to tell you about that. I was at the beach with my family. Wait, how are you able to see that?
I can see that because our EHR is actually Kno2 connected. So what that means is that we can share clinical information with other providers electronically and automatically. So essentially, no matter where you go, I'll have line of sight into your care, and I can also send your records electronically to others if they need them while they're caring for you.
Oh wow, that's amazing. I've never heard of anything like that before, but it's great to know that you're looking out for me no matter where I go.
Of course, we have the ability to connect with anyone, so it helps us make better clinical decisions and truly just keep our patients safe. So in your case, the records I received indicated an allergic reaction to the antibiotic. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do now. I broke out into a rash and had to go back for additional evaluation and treatment. But it was really painful. I was itchy all over, and I wasn't able to get any of my work done throughout the day.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let me do this for you. I'm going to include that allergy in my chart here. That way your record is up to date and complete, and it will avoid anyone giving you that same medication going forward.
That would be great. Sorry, I totally forgot to mention that.
No, it's okay. Don't apologize. It happens all the time. We're all busy and we just honestly forget stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you.
No problem. And trust me when I say we have your back because we're Kno2 connected. You're safer. We can see all of your care even when you can't remember it.
Connect, listen, transform. This is Kno2fy with your hosts, Dr. Peter Schuck and Teresa Bell.
Welcome to everybody. As we wrap up today's episode, as we normally do, I'd like to kind of go around the horn and kind of get final thoughts. And this is an opportunity for us to kind of emphasize things that we think are important, clarify anything that we might have said, or bring up anything that we missed. And one of the areas, Teresa, that I know as we were talking through the break that I want you to talk a little bit about was we had some strategic design pillars or guardrails, if you will. We wanted flexibility in how the document was sent and received. We wanted to be able to track the transactions in a smart way to understand where they were in the process so that the person requesting signature could be informed on a regular basis. And we really wanted to solve that last mile of automatic filing to each the rendering and referring provider's EHR. The rendering provider's EHR, so it's available for audit when they are audited and have that signature on file, and the referring provider so that they actually have that on file and can bill and generate revenue from care plan oversight, which is a very appropriate thing to do. And many don't because of the complexity of getting that into the electronic record. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think there's some uniqueness in this solution that we're bringing to market in addition to that full bookend strategic solution.
Yeah, I'll run quickly through it. I'm actually going to utilize the example that I like that MJ provided with the bow tie. You look at kind of that first, I guess, the right side or the left side, depending on which direction you're standing, that we're going to feed into it, into the bow tie, but starting at the source of origin from the electronic health record. MJ had mentioned omnichannel, meaning that DocuSign today provides different ways that a link for signing can be delivered. So mobile, email, of course, that everybody's familiar with. They also provide what's I think called remote signing, which means it could go to an iPad if you're sitting bedside, for instance, with the patient. We take advantage of all three. But they also provide a link through some of their integrations that they have through their APIs, where they'll provide you the link of the envelope, which we take advantage of as Kno2, and we can deliver it in the way that we best see fit. And we're doing that with this solution. So we're delivering right into the electronic health records where we can, into the workflow and the inboxes of the providers, because they want to, as much as they can, they want to keep all of their work experience within that EHR, everything that they have to do, their lists that they have to track, what they have to sign. And so we deliver it in a number of ways, but one of those also being direct secure message into certain EHRs that support it. So you can look at this as an expansion of the omnichannel that DocuSign provides in specific to healthcare. And fitting into those workflows. So the delivery of the content to the provider in their way, we call it provider preference. We're tracking that provider's preference on how they want to sign. Once it goes to that signature experience, and oh, by the way, that the flexibility of the DocuSign tool allows us to even brand the provider that's sending the document for signature. So there's a familiarity there, right? So if I know it's Boise PT that's sending me care plans, I'm familiar with that name, and there's a level of security, additional trust that comes to me that for signature. So they go through the signature workflows, and then, of course, based upon how we've integrated with DocuSign, we receive that confirmation back that the document has been signed. And if for some reason during that process, it did not get signed, it sat there too long, we're taking advantage of the constant communication that we're having with DocuSign to say, it's past X number of days, or it's past this long, resend it, pull that envelope back and resend it, or pull it back all together and let the sender know that this hasn't been signed yet. So we're keeping in track of where they're at along the process. It gets signed successfully, and then we get notified that it's completed, and we're doing a dual delivery back to the preference of the sender. So they want it right back in their electronic health record, of course, because that's their billing event. They start to actually get the customer in, the patient in, and they can bill off of it. But same thing with the signer. In some cases, there's also a billing event for them, and they have to keep it for CMS purposes that they signed this document. So we send it back in a kind of a dual path and let it allow to be filed back into both electronic health records of both providers that are involved. So really seamless solution. Excited about taking this to market here soon, and look forward to it.
Yeah, wonderful. I really appreciate walking through that, because I do think it's unique, and I do think it has a unique value in the market. So I would say we're coming. And MJ, any closing thoughts on your mind at all from today's conversation?
Yeah, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you guys in this venue. It's been great. I started by speaking about the history and the legacy of DocuSign, its rich history, and over 20 years, over 1 billion users in 180 countries. But I am just as excited about what's to come, right? Including our partnership. Just a month or so ago, we launched what we called IAM, the Intelligent Agreement Management Platform. And so again, going back to the bow tie, the knot is at the core, but there's so much value to be realized. And so we literally launched a new category of SaaS solutions, and it is intended to address what we call the agreement trap. And so there are countless numbers of agreements. In fact, within regulated industries like healthcare, upwards of 75% of business processes begin with some sort of a form or a document, right? And whether it's a care plan or an eligibility determination, prior authorization, you name it, there's some sort of a form. And in aggregate, after those forms are signed or contracts are executed, these repositories of archived agreements contain infinite value, but they're trapped either in paper or some siloed system that doesn't get revisited until it's time to sign again. And so the point of IAM, or the Intelligent Agreement Management Platform, is to unlock the value in that repository of documents, unlock the value that is trapped in those agreements. And so we're really looking forward to launching a number of pilots, and you'll see how we can help to tangibly deliver value by identifying the value that's trapped, unlocking it, and enabling our joint customers to see what would otherwise just sat dormant. And so looking forward, again, that's what I'm really excited about. We also talked a bit about, DocuSign's leadership position in e-sign, in contract lifecycle management. But what I'd like to say is I get oftentimes asked about, competitors. How is it that we're able to gain and maintain such a market share? And I very rarely talk about the other players in the space, because the way I see it, our greatest competitor and that of our customers is status quo. There is no bigger competition than business as usual, right? That is our competition, and that's what we're trying to undo. There's a quote that I use all the time, if any of your listeners have heard me speak before, and that is that the cost of doing nothing is not nothing, right? So let's tangibly quantify those opportunity costs. Let's collaboratively form the ways that we currently see these processes and think about transacting care plans and other document-driven processes. And let's get to work. I'm so excited about this partnership. So again, thank you both for having me.
And thank you for joining us today, and we really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to the partnership as well. And I love the idea of not being competition obsessed, but customer obsessed in terms of moving forward. I think Jeff Bezos said that years and years ago, but I think it bears out to be true. Great discussion today. Really appreciate it. And that does it for another episode of Kno2fy. Just put everybody on notice. We're coming to solve the provider-to-provider workflow agreements, Kno2 and DocuSign together. So really excited.
Thanks for joining us today. That's a wrap for this episode. Please subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform to make sure you don't miss an episode. Get Kno2 connected today and set yourself and your organization free to unlock your potential. For more information on the value of being Kno2 connected, visit us at www.kno2.com. Follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Connect, listen, transform.